right, thank you for staying with the State of the Nation. The discussion starts right now. My guests are with me. Professor Tom Ojienda is here, the Senator for Kisumu, Honorable Joe Nyutu, the Senator for Murang'a, and Eric Okeyo, Governance and Security Expert. Thank you all for making time this morning. Let's start off with the front page of the Daily Nation. There's a lot. Jirongo death mystery. There's also Justice, Supreme Court judge dies upon return from India. And I'll start with you, Prof. I know you knew Ibrahim before that, but also you read some sinister moves in the death of Jirongo, or do you buy the autopsy results that have come out?
Good morning, Trevor, and good morning, viewers. Now, Trevor, let me just mention, and maybe you may not know this, but the late Justice Mohammed Ibrahim was not just a judge of the Supreme Court, but also my pupil master. So he trained me when I was a pupil at Arroyo and Mwite Advocates, and taught me a number of ideals that I would later find useful in my practice. So in eulogizing Ibrahim on X, I posited that not only was he a man of integrity, but a great friend. Severally, when he was in the Court of Appeal and severally when he was in the High Court in Eldoret, and then later at the Supreme Court, we consulted severally. We were friends, kept a close working relationship, and it is sad that Kenya has lost a judge of that stature. I think that coming barely 2 weeks before his retirement, that's also a tell. I know that he had health issues, and he was hospitalized in India for a while, but I think we all mourn the judge as a great judge, and Kenya is all worse because we've lost him. May God rest his soul in eternal peace. Now, on the late Jirongo, I think the autopsy reports, I watched, Trevor, yesterday, the report by the two doctors the autopsy report by the two doctors, and their rendition of the last moments of the late Cyrus Jirongo. And I think a lot of the hours and the times and the CCTV coverage now seem to make sense in terms of when he had a meeting in Karen and later fueling at a petrol station in Naivasha, and then the accident. And even the bus that was involved. That was all shown last night on TV, and I think it begins to make sense. A lot of, in my understanding, the clarity of mind is that this must have been an accident that occurred in Naivasha at the appointed time, because there's evidence to that extent. I think the earlier concerns have now been, demystified, yes. Okay. I think the demystification of the medical questions coming after all that had been raised around the timing and his presence in Naivasha and driving. Naivasha takes 2 hours. I drive to Naivasha every week, so I know 1.5 hours you're in Naivasha. So you could easily leave a meeting at 11 p.m. and be in Naivasha at 1 a.m. In that case, it was at 2 when he was turning into the station, and then the unfortunate crash happened 6 seconds into the turning on the road.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Again, we are sad. Cyrus Jirongo, a brave man, a businessman. I think one of the a straight-talking politician. I knew him because he was a friend of one of our friends from the region, the former clerk to the county. I know Cyrus Jirongo well. Yeah. And at some point, I think I also acted for him, so I know him that well.
Okay.
So Honorable Joe? All rest in eternal peace.
Thank you, Trevor, and allow me
to pass your condolences to the two families that are in mourning.
Allow me to also pass my deepest condolences to the two families. First, that of Honorable Cyrus Jirongo, who passed earlier, and then that of Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, I think, who passed on yesterday, or the news came in yesterday that he had passed away. These are two great Kenyans, and it's a loss, actually, not just to the families, but also to Kenyans. I may not have had the advantage, like a professor here, to have interacted with any of them, but of course they were public figures that were known, and their contribution in nation building in their respective fields, of course, is something that is well documented in the history or in the books of this country. Coming to the autopsy reports yesterday made by the doctors who performed this particular post-mortem, it is consistent with a victim of a road accident or an accident, but then there are still questions that linger, just like listed on The Nation today. I mean, how Jirongo was driving again from Naivasha to Nairobi, and no account, of course, has been given by any of the passengers in the bus that collided with Jirongo's car. And of course, there are many things that somebody may ask, about questions that anybody may ask naturally, because there are things that, apart from the autopsy report, there are very many questions that linger. I mean, whom it is that maybe he had gone to sit in Naivasha, whom it is that he last maybe talked on phone with. Exactly how did he go to Naivasha? Because you have seen the Honorable Ngumo and Haniri say that he left Karen, headed to Gigiri, I think where his home is. How he ended up in Naivasha is actually the question. Whom he was with, whom maybe he called. Nobody has released this information. That is why there is speculation. Why the passengers, none of them has, in the bus, none of them has been given an opportunity to give an account. And the bus driver said there were about, the bus had about 65 passengers on board. I think these are the questions. But anyway, the doctors gave a report, and it's good not to speculate. I believe that the investigative agencies are going to answer the questions that still linger.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Trevor, and good morning to viewers. Like my senator, I had very close interaction with Justice Mohamed Ibrahim for many, many years. He was a very close friend of mine, and I joined the legal fraternity, the judiciary, and his family in mourning him. I am aware that he has been battling ill health for some time, and that he was also staring into his retirement in a few weeks. We pray that the good Lord will rest his soul in peace. I also had close interaction with the Honorable Jirongo. When I first ran for MP Nyakach in 2013, I ran on his party, Federal Party of Kenya, so he remained a close friend of mine. There is no dispute with the autopsy report that the doctors, the pathologists released yesterday. When you look at the footage of the CCTV of the vehicle driving into the fuel station in Naivasha, first, he didn't even fuel. He just drove in and off. He did not stop at all. And the footage contradicts the press interview that your colleagues had with the driver, in which he said the impact was when he had stopped and he had 65 passengers. But when you look at the footage critically, you see a bus that was on motion at the time of this impact. So I don't want to speculate. I leave it to police. But it is curious that a bus that was going to Western would easily have been carrying Kenyans of Luhya and Luo origin generally, those who take death very seriously. And so it is curious that no passenger came out of the bus or to even be interviewed, where the passenger manifest remains an interest that the investigators need to look at. Another interesting thing is there has not been any footage of this entertainment joint
he last was at in Karen. It would be interesting also to look at that footage and to also interview the prominent personalities he is said to have been with at that entertainment joint. But the result is many accidents in this country have been accidents by English word, but inquests reveal half the time many interesting things. But let me not speculate. It's under investigation. May the soul of CJ, as we called him, rest in peace.
All right. We're just touching on what's going on the dailies here, and there's another issue here that I need us to touch on, and Prof, I'll come back to you again. How globe-trotting county officials splashed millions on lucrative trips, and the latest report by the Control of Budget, Margaret Nyakango, shows devolved units spent more on foreign and local travel and were completely unable to spend money development expenditure. In fact, some counties like yours in Kisumu spent zero on expenditure of development, claiming that the EGP system doesn't work. Siaya and Kisumu spent zero. The highest expenditure was 21% from Isiolo. But are you as senators concerned that most of the expenditure in counties are either recurrent or local and foreign travel?
Trevor, that's an important point, and I think this goes right to we dive right into the work of the Public Accounts Committee, the PAC of Senate, and the Public Investment Committee, PIC, on expenditure and on oversight, what Senate ought to do in terms of its functions under Article 96 of the Constitution. Now, oversight means that we must pick those things that are important to governance, and where there's waste, we must point a finger, make recommendations. And what we are dealing with here, for instance, on foreign travel, is that committees, for instance, even Parliament, committees of Parliament get annual allocations. Committees have 9 members, for instance, and each committee will get an annual travel allocation, foreign travel allocation of about 12.5 million Kenyan shillings. In the county assemblies, it is less, but there's a budget line where once assemblies are given monies, then the travel calendar is then assigned by the Speaker to the respective committee. Now, and I think this is the important point, Trevor. Travel should not just be undertaken for the sake of travel or for the sake of it.
Should it even be undertaken?
For travel's purpose. Travel is supposed to be undertaken for comparative purposes or to enrich the functions of Parliament or the Assembly. To be able for assemblies or parliaments to be able to get the best case studies from the region and out there. For instance, if you go to Singapore, for instance, now we are moving to the first world economy. We are dealing with the creation of a public infrastructure fund. For instance, the Finance Committee of the National Assembly or the Finance Committee of Senate would pay a visit to, I know that there's so much desktop research you can do, but an interaction enhances the quality of oversight. And therefore, senators from Kenya belonging to the Finance Committee would, for instance, visit Singapore, an equivalent committee in Singapore, to pick the best study on, for instance, the establishment of public infrastructure. For instance, that's an example. But travel for the sake of travel is what leads to waste. No value, where a member of Parliament or a member of county assembly, or because there's a budget, people travel because there's a budget allocation in the year. So I think that is what Nyakango is raising, that what is the value of such travel? And perhaps it is time, Trevor, and this is a challenge to all of us, for the oversight committees in Senate, because this is within the purview of Senate, to deal with this question and examine what kind of budgets are placed for some of these organs and whether there's value for money in certain activities undertaken by these houses. For instance, county assemblies, because if it is clear, as Nyakango said, that there's waste and there's so much expenditure on an item, a line item, without value or a return, then it is time that Senate undertakes its functions as required, which we normally do oversight for purposes of realigning expenses to a direction that will benefit Kenyans.
Okay.
Because you cannot tell me, for instance, the Isiolo County government, for instance, we know that the governor came for impeachment the other day before the House. Of course, the impeachment did not go through. But yet, in terms of development, Isiolo ranks higher than counties like Kisumu. That is,
in terms of development expenditure for this.
Yes, that is crazy, because you cannot then say, when you'd say problem counties or trouble counties are actually doing better in terms of development expenditure than some of the counties that we think are doing well. So it's time also, and perhaps, Trevor, it is also time that county assemblies wake up. You know, the problem with most county assemblies is that they are monolithic. That is to say, county assembly belong to one political party. And there is always zero oversight, because the political party or the doyens of the party always speak down to the governance structure of the county assembly. So the county assembly is unable to oversight the executive. I think this is a challenge for county assembly, because they need to do, under the constitution, county assemblies, and as contemplated by devolution or the devolved structure under Article Section 175 of the County Government Act, they are 118, 117. They are intended to do primary oversight of entities. So when they are unable to do primary oversight, then a Senate or a senator for my county, for instance, we have to do both primary and secondary oversight.
Okay.
So they need to go back and look at these reports and forget about their monolithism and focus on oversight.
Okay. All right, let me bring in John. You're also a senator from Great People of Murang'a. This travel, is it necessary? Because it's the 21st century. I don't need to go to Singapore to know what happens there, especially if you're a legislator. Or at least you can send one representative. Why does the entire committee have to go?
Well, Trevor, I think travel in itself is not, I don't think it's a bad thing. Of course, I agree with you that you don't have to travel to know what happens in a particular, jurisdiction, a different jurisdiction or something like that. But then there is also that social interaction that you get with the travel, and there is also that seeing and maybe asking questions that you may not be able to ask maybe through the internet or something like that. So essentially, travel is not a bad thing. What is very bad, and I think that is why the control of budget is complaining, and I join her in complaining about this, is where we just travel, but do not do anything, no development at all in the county. That is a matter that is very serious, and I think it's a matter of priorities. And I think I want to believe that the county assemblies also have a liaison committee that sits and allocates monies to various functions. But Trevor, we must also remember that most of these county governments, and that's why their current expenditure is very high. You know, they inherited, a good chunk of the workforce from the defunct local authorities. And I think there has been a problem, and that is why it is not possible, it has not been very possible to maintain that 35%, requirement, that you only spend 35% on recurrent expenditure. But I agree with the control budget that this travel, is gobbling a lot of money, and especially when it comes at the expense of important functions of the county, like development. I think it's a matter of great concern, and that maybe we also would want to look at as the Senate. And I want to join Professor Ojienda on this, that sometimes county assemblies are compromised. And this is not something that actually is just with the county assemblies, even in Parliament. And I agree with him that, this dependence on the executive, even for allocation of funds. And that's why I support the recommendations by county assemblies. I think through the county assemblies forum that they be autonomous financially, that monies meant for the county assemblies, are disbursed to the county assembly directly and not through the county, the county government. Because this way, then MCAs would be able to do oversight, primary oversight, because I totally agree with Professor Ojienda that ours as Senate is supposed to be secondary oversight. Because, like you know, and it's important to tell Kenyans, as Senate, we do not have the power to approve or disapprove any county expenditure. I mean, we can only, maybe, our job is basically like that of a mortician. We can only look at what the counties have done and then maybe make an assessment and make a recommendation. We don't have the power to do so. It's the county assembly that has the power to approve or disapprove county expenditure or programs before they happen. For us, we do not have that power. And I think it's important that we give, I know I'm repeating this because it's important, that we give county assemblies their autonomy. Only in that manner or through that particular, provision will the county assemblies be independent of the county executives. And that is when we can be able to curb this kind of waste in foreign and domestic travel.
Okay. When you see that 36 counties spent more than 500 million on travel in the first quarter of 2025-2026, according to the control of budgets, and yet they are unable to absorb development expenditure, who's fooling who here? Or is it a structural issue? Is it that these are designed to fail? What is the problem with this?
Trevor, first, majority of these counties, in my view, are mere conduits for theft and pilferage. I say so because and that's why I said majority, because there is my exceptional cases where governors are doing a good job. But I agree with my own senator here, himself a celebrated advocate, that county assemblies have not been empowered. And Senator Joe says they are secondary themselves in their work of that oversight. One then would expect senators to go down and empower the county assemblies, empower the MCS with sufficient knowledge that half the time is missing, that will help them not to be monolithic, to borrow the words of Professor here, and be objective in oversighting. The danger is that county governments deal with county assemblies as inferior extensions of their structure. And that is the weakest link, which is why it makes sense to attempt to propose that the exchequer disburses directly to county assemblies, and then they're able to oversight the county executives objectively. Now, when we come to this travel, you know, MPs, whether in the National Assembly or Senate, will disagree on many other things except that which benefit them to the detriment of Mwananchi. Because you see, going to benchmark by the entire committee is wasteful. And sometimes you find non-essential members in those delegations. They call them support staff. What the staff support outside jurisdiction, you don't know. And the staff draw allowances from the taxpayers' coffer. So a broader governance would envision a situation where there was a cap, that if there was need to do an international trip in the name of true benchmarking, then you say, let us take, for example, 2 or 3 members out of the 9, and in the next phase, take the other. I know of situations where they christen them as benchmarks, but they are just outward joyrides. And when you see photos they post in those destinations, when they return here, they have nothing to show to Mwananchi. So, and I think that's why I insist that many of these counties are deliberate conduits, and I wish that the controller of budget had more teeth than just whistleblowing. And you see, even my senator is here celebrating himself that he is a good lawyer. But his county, which is also yours and mine, posts 0 on development. And he is here. So you ask him, even if it is secondary, what has he done in the endeavor to oversight that county? Yeah, so I think they have run away from core. Those of us who knew Senator Ojienda before he became senator knew a very good lawyer, as he said. Something happened when he became senator, because in fact he became a Raila rebel, then a Ruto apologist. So he's unable to balance the two in the course of oversight.
I need to respond to
You'll respond, but let's take a quick break. But Senator Manzi is now joining us. You just walked in when you're talking about these counties splashing millions on workshops and not being able to spend on development expenditure. Their argument is that there was an EGP issue, which is the reason why they've not been able to spend, but yet there are still some counties that have been able to spend despite that EGP concern, like Isiolo, for example, and there's managed 21%. The rest are as low as 4%, some are at 0%. So is this travel really necessary? Are we placing budgets in the wrong budget lines?
First, my apologies. The road around the State House is blocked. You know, some people are visiting the State House, and therefore I used the wrong route, and I'm sorry. I got held up there.
They're the members of WIPA.
No. It's the minorities communities. The minorities for communities.
WIPA is not minority.
We are not minority. Any chance you wish. I really want to say that the issue of the counties it's been very difficult, because we expect development through the counties, and although the money is delayed, a big allocation to travel, and for that matter international travel, will mean that there is less allocation on development. There are some international conferences members of county assemblies can benefit, so that they can know how oversight takes place in countries with a similar jurisdiction. And in our case, our constitution borrowed a lot from South Africa. It has also borrowed a lot from America. And therefore, that exposure once in a while is very important, and especially for relevant committees. But at the same time, in future, I think we need to allocate more money into development, because you have very little money left for development in counties. A lot of it go into expenditures, salaries, the administration of the county, and very, very little go to development. So I think going forward in future, that's something we need to invest in, so that we make sure monies go to the counties and they go for development. Right. It should be the other way around, but unfortunately up to now, more money is going into expenditure other than development. All right.
I have to take a quick break. When we come back now, we get into the hardcore politics. There's a lot to talk about. Should Mount Kenya East and West split? Are we heading into the first world status? Is there post and pre-election bargain between ODM and UDL? We'll play some of the sound bites from the Penyiluo festival that just ended here. As we take that quick break, we're back in just a short while. Keep your views coming as well, so that we see at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Citizen Daybreak. See you in just a bit.